Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. We're back with 5 Minute Sociology, and today we're going to talk about social capital. We're going to give you the background, explain the idea, run you through some examples, and you'll be right as rain for that upcoming exam. Got a lot to do today, so let's get started. At its core, social capital is a resource constructed on relationships and networks, which we can use to overcome common individual problems. Let's say your problem today is you need to move out of your dorm. Well, you need somebody with a truck, right? And maybe you know somebody in your network with a truck. Well, social capital would take this up a notch. Not only do you know a person in your network with a truck, but on top of that, they have a common sense of identity with you. They share your same norms, values, and more. And on top of that, maybe they have a shared sense of reciprocity. I'm going to help you today, but in the future, you may need to help me with something. Now, the cool thing about social capital is it can be spent like a resource, much like money, to purchase all sorts of cool things like information, opportunity, even access to jobs. Now, later in this presentation, we're going to break this down into three pieces. But to do that, I first need to dig into the very complex history of social capital. Early philosophers were using the idea of social capital without saying the phrase. But the idea really becomes famous in the United States in the 1990s because of a guy by the name of Robert Putnam. He writes a book called Bowling Alone, which is a great read, I suggest. He talks about how individuals were not getting networking opportunities and the chance to go bowling together, which means they were reducing their political and civic engagement. Now, he argues that a guy by the name of L.J. Hanifan back in 1916 gets credit for the idea. Hanifan was an educator in West Virginia, and in his work, he was talking about the value of getting an education and how it leads to greater things. James Farr, however, in 2004, after Putnam's book, writes an article saying, well, actually, this was John Dewey's idea. And he says, as early as 1900 and also in one of the writings from 1915 that Dewey was talking about this. And to give some credit to that, Hanifan actually says Dewey was one of his influences. To make crazier opportunities of this, Marx was also talking about this idea way back in the 1860s, but he was thinking about it in a slightly different direction that's a little more political economy. Now, there are two modern scholars which had huge contributions to the idea of social capital. That would be Bourdieu, who was talking about in 1986 the importance of social capital and social class. And also we have James Coleman, who in the 80s and early 90s was talking about different kinds of social capital. For our example today, let's use Coleman's three forms of social capital as well as Bourdieu's idea on social class and social capital. Now, Coleman thought of three forms of social capital: social norms, information channels, and obligations and expectations. When we're looking for a job, thinking about social norms, it is perfectly normal that others around us would be expected to help with my search. Let's pretend that I'm looking for a job. I'm going to put on LinkedIn that I'm open to work and I'm looking for opportunities. I'll put a post in there about my skills. And it's now understood that the people around me should like that post and take it upon themselves to help me because they have a shared sense of identity and purpose with who I am. Moreover, they're going to use their information channels to get to opportunities that maybe I don't know about. Maybe one of my contacts knows a person at X company who's doing the exact kind of work that I do, and they need a person, and they haven't listed the job yet. But listen, I think this might be the person. I think you need to hire them. They get my resume over to them, and they say, this is a recommendation for me. This person is great. I know their work. I think you should hire them. Here, let me put you two on an email together. Finally, there's a sense of obligation and expectations. Let's pretend that I get that job. It's now understood that these people who helped me, when they start looking for a job, I'm going to help them. Now, throughout this, Bourdieu would say that's all great, but think about how social class matters. If you have a higher social class, such as you have a ton of wealth and power, you're going to be going for very different opportunities. Maybe your social capital will take people all the way to DC and get these really cool jobs there. And now, if we're talking about social capital that's built up at your rural community church, which I had when I was a kid, maybe that's going to get you a job in like local or city government or something like that. But you can see the difference in the scale based on Bourdieu's ideas. Social capital is a really cool idea because it lets us think about how the individual builds up imaginary resources in our society and can use those resources to do really cool things. But Bourdieu also gives us a sense that if you have a high social class, you can stretch that social capital to do even more things and go much further with it. It's a really cool idea. That's all we got time for today. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover in a future video, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Take care.